during COVID, when we're all sitting at home, it's sort of like a ray of light that we get to watch these amazing sessions when we can't all be together. It certainly brightens up my evenings.
आज पेंडेमिक में हम डिजिटली जयपुर लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल कर रहे हैं और मुझे लगता है कि हमारे सामने श्रोता नहीं है, हम आपस में बात कर रहे हैं, लेकिन उस फील को, उस उमंग को महसूस कर सकते हैं कि हजारों लाखों लोग हमसे जुड़े हुए हैं, हमको सुन रहे हैं और कहीं ना कहीं कोई एक सार्थक हस्तक्षेप हो रहा है.
People who came online to view and listen to our incredible speakers from across the world, we were able to continue in our tradition of ensuring the free flow of knowledge and information.
On behalf of Namita Gokhale, William Dalrymple, Sanjoy Roy, and all of us at Teamwork Arts, I welcome you to this session of the Jaipur Literature Festival Online Series 2021. Today we present Cricket, Facts and Fiction, Sunil Gupta and Suprita Das in conversation with Keshava Guha. Even the most divided times, the nation's romance with cricket has been a strong unifying force. But what does this obsession stem from? What is this power that has the Indian population holding their collective breaths in front of the screen? Journalist and author Suprita Das's book, Free Hit, The Story of Women's Cricket in India, addresses the many challenges faced by the women's cricket team. Sunil Gupta's book, Final Innings, is a fictional account of the life of a player in the Indian cricket team. Writer and journalist Keshava Guha is an ardent fan and writes extensively on the many nuances of the sport. Examining the magic of cricket through the lens of fact and fiction, a session which explores the spirit of the game and the place it holds in our collective imaginations. Sunil Gupta is a man of many parts: author, stage, film and TV actor, radio and TV anchor and presenter, international sports commentator, history buff, and advertising professional. Suprita Das has been working as a sports media professional for close to 15 years now. A decade of that was spent as a sports correspondent and anchor at NDTV. She's the author of 2 books, Shadow Fighter, the biography of Indian boxer Sarita Devi, and Free Hit, the story of women's cricket in India, which recently won a national award. She currently heads communications at the Delhi Capitals IPL franchise and writes on sport for various publications occasionally. Keshava Guha is a writer and editor. His novel, Accidental Magic, is set in Boston in the early 2000s in a community of adult Harry Potter obsessives. All our sessions that have been broadcast till now are available on our website in the Mughal Tent venue and also on our Facebook and YouTube channels, so please do catch them when you have the time. Ladies and gentlemen, we now present Cricket, Facts and Fiction, Sunil Gupta and Suprita Das in conversation with Keshava Guha. Over to you, Keshava.
Thank you, Kritika. So it's always a treat to be able to talk about cricket, even more when the topic is cricket books. It's often said that cricket inspires more good writing than any other sport. But the interesting thing about the 2 wonderful books that we're going to discuss today is that they are actually quite unusual, and they actually represent, or they fill gaps in the literature of cricket. There are all kinds of cricket books in the world, but there are relatively few books on women's cricket for reasons that we'll come to. And there are actually surprisingly few cricket novels and almost no Indian cricket novels. So Suprita Das's Free Hit, A History of Women's Cricket in India, is really a pioneering book. I think it's one of only 2 probably serious cricket histories of women's cricket in India. There have been dozens of books on, or hundreds of books on Indian men's cricket. And Sunil Gupta's thrilling novel, Final Innings, is, I think, almost one of a kind in the way that it actually takes us, star cricketer from the Indian team, takes us through the ups and downs of his life on and off the pitch. So I wanted to start by asking both of you the same question. We'll start with Suprita, and that is, just tell us a little bit about how your book came to be. Starting from your entry into the world of cricket to what brought you to write this particular book.
Firstly, thank you so much for having me, and this is great to talk about cricket and cricket books. So Free Hit happened honestly at the desk of NDTV. This was the evening during the 2017 Cricket World Cup, Women's World Cup, which was happening in England. I was not traveling for it, but I was filing the match copy. And this was an India versus Australia match, and it was in this match that Mithali Raj had gone past Charlotte Edwards for most runs, in women's ODI cricket. And I was actually filing that copy. I was writing my report when it suddenly clicked to me that here's this girl who has achieved so much. She's made records, she's broken records, and we've got Julan, who's such a stalwart, a part of that same team, who has also achieved so much. And both these girls have done all of these amazing things with little or no ecosystem for a large part of their careers, and have done all of it in absolute ambiguity. And therein lies a stellar story. So that really was my sort of skeletal idea, if one were to put it that way, with which I approached my publishers, with whom I had already published once, which was my boxing book. And they actually asked me to flesh the idea out further because, like you mentioned in your introduction, there wasn't really any literature as such available on women's cricket, and everything really had to be done from scratch. So they thought that it would be powerful and it would be useful to really trace the story of women's cricket in India, because while the careers of let's say the more recent years of Mithali and Julan, and maybe now the likes of Smriti or Harmanpreet Kaur may be well documented, and of course now we're living in the day and age of social media. What really happened before that? Who was the first batch of women's cricket? What happened even before Mithali and Julan, and what were those stories? So I had to date back to that, and it seemed fascinating as an assignment. So I was up for it, not knowing that it was going to be a massive, massive challenge, simply because there is no archival system, there is no literature, nothing really as such to refer to. So practically everything is done on the basis of primary interviews. And I was really sitting on like hours and hours of recording to sift through. But but free hit happened, and I'm glad it happened at the time, and I hope it's useful. Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned the 2017 World Cup, because that's a tournament that I think I remember so many male cricket fans that I know who didn't watch women's cricket closely earlier were almost converted by that World Cup, and even women who hadn't followed cricket at all. I think the country really paid attention in a way that it hadn't before, to an extent that it hadn't before. So over to you, Sunil, the story of behind your book.
Thanks very much, Keshav and Suprita, and of course DLF, for having me on this show. And thank you for the kind words, Keshav. I've been actually struggling. I knew this question would be there. A lot of people asked me the same question. There are so many strands that have gone into my thinking on this book. It's not a unilateral book or just a linear book. The first thing is that it's not a cricket book. I don't call it a cricket book. I call it a human interest story set in the world of cricket. So let's start with the latter part. Why set in the world of cricket? Because quite obviously we all know it's the lingua franca of the subcontinent. Everybody in the Commonwealth countries at least follows cricket. So it was a good backdrop to have, because in its own way, it provides its own drama, its own tensions. All these things can play out as a sort of backdrop to the story. And then I came to the part of the first thing, which is that a human interest story. Now, the human interest, everything that, in fact, even Suprita was saying about Mithali and Harmanpreet and Julan, and we all know these names, right? We know all the Tendulkars and the Gavaskars and everybody. We know the names, but we see them only in one light, by and large. We don't know what the man is, or the person is, the human being is behind. And I always felt that there is a need to talk about the cricketer as a human being, with his fears, with his idiosyncrasies, with his desires, and make him a human being. Right now, he is up there. You see him in the advertisements, you see him on television. We'll come to that part later. But he's almost like a semigod or a demigod. Actually, they're human beings. They have the same fears that you and I have, of failure, of success, so many things that go into it. And the last part of that was, can one individual make a difference? Can one individual make a difference, not just the cricketing field, as I said, that's only a backdrop, but in life, through all the things that are going around in our environment? Because we're a product of our environment. We respond to the environment. So we should not feel that the cricketer's response is only to what happens in the cricket field or in the training academy or in the nets. It is actually that he lives a large part of his life outside that. And what does he think about? What turns him on? What turns him off? What's his personal life like? Without going into any gory details. And of course, the subcontinent in its larger context. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. That always was a beacon. It was like a siren to me, a siren on the rock saying, this is something that you need to include in the story that you're going to be writing. So it's a lot of strands that have come together in Final Innings.
And I think people should know that Sunil's novel, Final Innings, it's very much not just an Indian story. Cricket is not just a lingua franca, as mentioned, of the subcontinent, but actually speaks to different countries. So, of course, it's a subcontinent, but England and Australia both play significant roles in your book as well. So back to Suprita. Now, your book starts really in the early 1970s. And the amazing thing about that is how recent it is, because men were playing cricket in India, boys were playing cricket in India in the 1840s. And the first men's cricket team tours England, the All India team, in 1911. And it's really only around that time, 1911, 1912, that you have the first record of women playing cricket. Now, and then it's only the 70s that they start playing in a really organized way with the first club and all of that. So this may seem like an obvious question, but I think some readers will wonder, like, why so late? It's not that women weren't playing sports. I mean, you had women playing basketball and volleyball and tennis and swimming and athletics and all of that in the 40s and 50s. So cricket are not maybe technically our national game, but our most popular game. Why did it take so long?
I think so. Girls were playing cricket. It just was not happening in a very organized way. Someone like Diana Adalji, for example, who's from the first generation of women cricketers of our country, who grew up in the railway colony in Bombay because her father used to work in the Western Railways. She grew up playing cricket with the colony boys, as she calls it. Similarly, there were girls who were playing, on an individual basis, perhaps on the streets or in the gardens or in the backyards, maybe with friends, with their dads, with their elder brothers, that sort of thing. So it really wasn't something that was organized. And of course, school, which is where, sort of sport starts in some sort of an organized fashion. There was no concept of really women's cricket or women's cricket teams. So girls were getting together just, in an unorganized fashion and playing because the Indian men's team was performing. They were reading those stories in the newspapers, and they also wanted to give it a shot. It was only later, of course, that women's cricket got some sort of shape, which was given by a man, interestingly, Mr. M.K. Sharma, Mahendra Kumar Sharma, who had taken a bunch of girls with him. And then in Lucknow, he managed to source a ground, which was a college ground. He got hold of a bunch of girls. He went about, in a rickshaw, making an announcement saying, "Yahan ladkiyon ki cricket match hone wali hai, to aap dekhne aaiye," that sort of a thing. That's when it sort of started really getting and falling in place bit by bit. But otherwise, it was unorganized because till then nobody really had made the effort to put a system or anything in place. And the interest levels also grew when there was some sort of a system put in place. Yeah.
And I'm sure, Sunil, you must have been sort of early in your cricket watching days when the likes of when India was first starting playing women's cricket, when Diana Adalji, Shanta Rangaswamy and others were, I'm sure you remember all that quite.
Yeah, I remember it. I remember it, Keshav. I've done commentary on women's cricket matches as well as a part of all the things I've done.
Yeah.
But I, that's right. I mean, it's not just a question of the system being in place, and Suprita will agree with me. I mean, look at Shefali Verma, right? Yeah. Let's talk about her. I mean, she had to play with the boys by cutting her hair, and it's only, and it's parental approval that is so important.
Yeah, yeah.
How many cricketers, women cricketers especially, are hidden away? They can't be seen because the community will not allow it. The colony will not allow it. The relatives will not allow it. We read about what's happening with the Indian hockey team.
Yeah,
So there is a gender issue. There is
Yeah,
definitely a gender issue. But you're right, Suprita. I mean, success always comes up, and of course, and we must acknowledge television. I mean, success can be fine. You can read about it in newspaper, but unless you can see it on television, it's not going to catch your imagination.
Yeah.
So I want. Sorry, go ahead, Suprita.
No, sorry. The only thing I wanted to mention is, a lot of women athletes in India. I mean, like he mentioned, the visibility is very important. But a lot of parents back then, and in fact even now, feel that their daughters should not be out for so many hours in the sun playing cricket. Someone like Sania Mirza, who is one of our most stellar athletes, and who I've had the good fortune of interviewing many, many times, she'll tell you that a lot of people, neighbors, relatives, thought that she should play badminton instead. And they said badminton is more of a girl's sport. Why? Because it's indoors. Tennis, you'll have to travel so much from one place to another. You're in a tennis court, God knows for how many hours, playing a match, training there also. So she was highly discouraged by people, not her parents, but within the family, to play badminton because it was more girly. Similarly for cricket, 6-7 hours out in the sun, you're gonna get dark. Nobody's going to marry you. What you're gonna get tired, maybe faint in the sun. Get hurt, and distort your face or something like that. Those were, I think, more serious issues back then when women were starting out, and things are, of course, changing now. But those are still very, very, very relevant issues as far as women's sport in India is concerned. Yeah.
So, Sunil, I wanted to take up something you said in your earlier description of your own book, which was the cricketer's personal life, the life off the field, their inner life, and all that. It's true that fiction is generally the only way really you can handle somebody's inner life. So I was struck reading your book. Your protagonist, Ramdas, who is this sort of batsman who's known for putting the team before himself and playing these crucial innings in difficult situations and all of that. He's someone with a very rich inner life and a very rich life off the field. And I felt a little bit that he was a bit of a throwback to an earlier generation of cricketer. A few years ago, I had a conversation with somebody who had been a coach of the Indian team. I'm not going to name any names, but they've only been a few coaches of the Indian team for the last 20 years. And he said that he had found it very difficult to relate to the players because this generation of cricketers had started playing so early that they had no developed interests or life outside of the game. And he said, they finish playing and then they just want to maybe play video games or spend time on Instagram. And he said, I tried to talk to them about things other than cricket to turn them from boys into men, but I couldn't really connect with them. Ramdas, has been to college, which it used to be the norm for Indian cricketers that they would go to college. Today in the current team, I think R. Ashwin is one of the only ones who is actually a college graduate and is also somebody with a rich life. But I don't mean to dwell on this college, non-college distinction, but I think that I did feel that Ramdas was, if Ramdas were really part of today's Indian team, men's team, he'd be seen as the exception. And actually, Suprita, after we hear from Sunil, I want you to comment on this as well, because I still vividly remember, it may have been in the 2017 World Cup, only when Mithali Raj was reading a Rumi book, while she's waiting to go into bat. And I was thinking then that I've never seen an Indian man in the dressing room reading a book while he's waiting to go into bat. Anyway, so would you agree that he's a bit of a old school kind of cricketer in that sense?
Oh, absolutely. Not just old school cricketer, but old school person.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think, Suprita's written non-fiction. I've written fiction. So I think a little bit of you creeps into your book, right? Yeah. And perhaps I'm an old-fashioned person. Perhaps I believe in those values of life.
Yeah.
Perhaps I believe in a rich life. But I think it's a non sequitur that a rich life leads to so many different ways that you can think about your life. You can think about your game. And remember, a cricketer's life, any sports person's life, is limited. I mean, you can play international cricket for only so long. Maybe you'll continue playing domestic cricket or any other sport. But after that, you fade away. So what happens after that? Right now, people set up academies. There must be a dime a dozen across India for cricket academies, or they get onto television to do commentary. But everybody can't do that, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they buy a farm and breed horses or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just wanted this person to be a different person. And there was there was a cricketer I modeled him on in a certain sense in my mind. Again, no names taken, but I think you'll understand who I'm talking about. And I thought that was so important to get across to people, that even as a sports person, you can have a rich life outside the cricket field.
Yeah.
That's why I want people to understand this is a human interest story and not a cricketing story.
Yeah. Suprita, anything to say about? Do you feel that the women's cricketers you've dealt with, they have a lot of interest outside cricket, or they're interesting personalities apart from cricket?
Yeah, so since you mentioned Mitali and that image of her reading Rumi before going into bat, which sort of went viral. If you speak to Mitali about it, she's totally chill about it, if I can call it so, because she's like, this is something I've been doing for years, and you ask the girls, if I'm seeing that the batting's going on all well and I don't need to go out there immediately, there's no crisis, I'm just going to pick a book up and read. And the thing is, the girls know this, they've seen this. It's just that was the very first time it was captured on television. And of course, I mean, a lot about the 2017 Women's World Cup was about how well it was covered. Every match was covered so well, whether it was on the broadcast or digitally. So that sort of, was very viral. But the interesting story about Mitali becoming such an avid book reader is the fact that she started playing cricket when she was really, really small. So the first time she got a call up for the Indian team, she made it to a list of probables, was in 1997 when the World Cup was held in India, and there was a probables camp going on in Calcutta. And her dad, took her to Calcutta on a train and dropped her off there. And she felt completely alien because everybody on that team was almost double her age. And here she was away from home for the very first time with women she did not know at all. She didn't know what to do. But Mitali, of course, had impressed people enough, with her performances in domestic cricket already. But the fact that, she was going to be spending a lot of time with people who are not her age made her automatically find a friend in books. So, and I remember her telling me, I think the first book which was offered to her by a senior teammate was a Jeffrey Archer, which she picked up on a train, and that's how she got hooked to it. So once in a while, it used to be her school books that she used to, take along with her, maybe finish homework, prepare for an exam and things like that. But books became her best friends because she felt that she was not old enough, to have conversations with her teammates. Of course, she's now played cricket with generations, of cricketers. But to be honest, like in this current lot, a bunch of them do have other interests, and that's great. You mentioned Shefali. I think the other super talented girl is Jemima Rodriguez, who I'm very happy has had a fantastic outing at the 100. And she's so talented. Not only did she very actively play another sport, she's represented Maharashtra at the junior level in hockey. And there was like a serious dilemma whether she was going to play cricket or play hockey. But I think she just realized that there was a little more better opportunities in cricket for her. But apart from that, I mean, she's a creative soul, If anybody follows her on social media, she's got this lively, bubbly personality. She sings, she dances, she's a really, really talented guitarist. And that just makes her like such a likable and lovable personality, which I think is also very important for a sport like women's cricket, which is, slowly the appetite for the game and the girls who play has been growing ever since 2017. And it's great for the game to have personalities like her. Yeah.
Do you think, Suprita, that women's cricketers are in a sense a bit more accessible and relatable than the biggest men's cricketers? Because men's cricketers are at a level of stardom and wealth where everybody in the country knows them. It's very difficult for journalists to get access to them. They're hidden behind all these layers of PR agents and all of that. And because I'm a big fan of football, for both men's football and women's football. And with women's football, I support Arsenal. The players will come and talk to the fans or the journalists after the match in a very informal way. And these are some of the best footballers in the world. But with men's football, you're never going to get near them. I mean, they're like in their own little bubble.
Yeah.
Do you find that women's cricketers are more accessible as for you as a journalist?
Definitely. I mean, it may be sad, but that is the reality. When I started working on Free Hit, I started out by making a list of the number of people I had to talk to, and the list of people who had to be interviewed was really long, because you're covering sort of generations of people, starting from the 60s and trying to get sort of up to speed up until now, as recent as possible. So that's a whole lot of people. But while it was difficult to sort of trace everyone, figure out where is the camp or the domestic tournament happening where I can go and find the maximum number of people to interview, so as to be able to manage my time and my travel across the country as well as I can. It was great talking to everyone. I did not come across any of the women who were not willing to give me time. They had their schedules, they were busy, so I may have not got an interview time at a preferred slot, but I requested, and they were always kind enough to talk, and no one ever came and told me in the middle saying, okay, your 30 minutes are up, you need to wrap up. That sort of a thing, which always happens when there is a PR driven conversation happening. And I understand those are also people working with their constraints. The male cricketer, for example, may have to do an interview with 10 different television channels. So he can only give 5 minutes to everyone. So the person has to come and do one cut sign in front of you when your time is up, or do something like this. But that never happened with me. Also, because these were interviews for a book, everyone knew that it's up for something longer. It's not something that needs to go on the news or on the newspaper the following day. So the nature of the conversation is also a lot more relaxed. And once they sort of warm up to you, they really do come out with those stories, and those are beautiful stories. So I'm so glad that nobody really said no. I may have had to push a couple of them a little bit to get a little more time, but really nobody said no, and I'm so thankful to all of them for that. Yeah.
So I think something that's very obvious about both your books, as different as they are, one being a work of reportage, one being fiction, is that they use cricket as a window to tell larger stories about bigger questions in society, politics, etc. And Sunil, your book uses a range of issues from, obviously the history of ongoing conflict between India and Pakistan is very central theme to the book. Then there's environmental degradation in the mountains. It was something I wanted to ask you about, because it's a very unusual concept to encounter in a cricket novel, is this motif running throughout the book of the audience stables. So could you maybe talk a little bit about what that idea is, and how you relate it to cricket?
Yeah, well, again, you talked about sort of the classical part of me coming into this thing. And I think that one of the things I wanted to bring into this book is that, first of all, a lot of people wouldn't understand what the audience stables was. So I wanted to bring something like that, which is that you clean up the mess. And there are a lot of messes. We might shy away from them. We might shut our eyes, look the other way, as Dylan said. But there are messes, and you've got to talk about them. And you can either pontificate about them, or you can tell them in a way that people eventually think about them. And that's what I wanted people to do after this book. If you know, and you've read the book and all that, there is no Bollywood ending, right?
No.
And because there is no Bollywood ending in life. This is not I went and scored that terrific century with the, number 11 and we made 300 and we won. There's nothing like this in this book. So to my mind, there are audience stables, not literally only in terms of, as you said, in the subcontinent, in terms of the environment, climate change, and everything that goes with it, in our minds, all the types of things that we see today in our own environment, across the world. Why is there so much hatred? You aren't born hating, you're taught to hate. And that is the biggest audience table. Divisiveness, you are taught that. And these are things that we need to think about. And as I said, I mean, I could have made the protagonist anybody, But because it's cricket and you can bring the cricketing element into it, including what's taking place in the subcontinent, I thought that that would strike a chord and bring these elements or these issues to life. So that was very important for me.
And just a quick follow-up on that. I mean, over your decades of watching cricket, commentating, writing this book, do you think cricket has ultimately been more of a force for bridging those divides or for actually exacerbating them?
You know, it depends on who is running it. Okay.
Yeah.
To my mind, any sport, and you go back to ping pong diplomacy and stuff like that, any sport is a bridge for joining people together. Look what happened at the basketball game between the US and Iran at the Olympics. I mean, they hugged and they shook hands and they actually stood for each other's anthem and applauded. And you know what's going on in the world, right? So I'm saying, why is that an unusual thing? Why should we be talking about this? This is a normal thing. So I think that is the whole point. Then, of course, sports is a uniting force. I've seen, and I'm sorry, this is an anecdote, that 2007, Pakistan were playing at the Kotla and Shoaib Akhtar went down to find man to field, and everybody in the ground went there. And there was a legendary Indian cricketer in the dressing room balcony, and there was nobody even talking to him. You know, and you know what happens when India's gone there last many times, many years ago, and they come here. It is great fun. See what happens abroad. There is no hatred between them, and that is the whole point. That as human beings, what can we do to change things? And it's all there in the mind. Those are our biggest audience tables.
Yeah. No, it's remarkable that, Virat Kohli is likely to have started and finished his career without ever playing a test match against Pakistan. Because that test match you described with the Kotla was one of that's the last series.
Exactly.
You between the two countries.
Keshav, exactly. You think about it. What a travesty. What a travesty for something like this to take place. True. You know, and in the world of sport, you're using that as a pawn. I mean, come on, there are other ways of doing things. Why let that suffer? And then people come together because of that.
Yeah.
But maybe people don't want that.
So, Suprita, of course, a big theme of your book is sexism, discrimination, patriarchy, whatever you want to call it. And one of the things I took away from the book was, I feel like we've come like 5% of the way that we need to go in cricket. I mean, to really reach a position of equality. So I wanted to ask you about the question of equal pay. Firstly, what you think what should we be aiming for, and what do you think we can what are some realistic targets that we should be, maybe as fans or as people who love cricket, be trying to fight for in the short term?
Okay, I'll share my thoughts. I think it is still a little early for fans to expect India's women and men cricketers to be paid exactly the same amount of money. And to be honest, a lot of the girls, if you speak with them, they understand this as well. They realize that their sport has been on the rise only for about 3 to 4 years now. It is only now that people are getting to know them, want to follow their sport. There is an appetite for the sport. And in fact, if any of their matches are not televised, then there is a very strong community online, at least, that makes a noise, asking, hey, what the hell? There's an India match going on. Why can I not watch it on any of, my TV channels? There are so many of them. Why are you still watching, MS Dhoni's last ball 6 from 2011? Right? Yeah, that keeps coming all the time. Kabaddi highlights keep coming on. Why are you not showing Harmanpreet's 171 not out against Australia? So there is that fan following. Having said that, everyone in the cricketing ecosystem understand it is a business, and the math doesn't add up for the women to be earning as much money as the men at the moment. But this is a graph that's only gone up. Like Julan told me when I was interviewing her for the book, she said that if you plant a seed today, and you're expecting it to grow into a full tree with flowers and fruits tomorrow morning, then you're the one who's being silly. It is going to take time for that tree to grow, for flowers and fruits. It's going to take years, It's taken us so many years, so many hardships and such a lot of sacrifice to come this far. Here we are in 2017, finally playing a World Cup where we get business class travel, where we get to stay in 5-star hotels like the men. We don't have to fight for our daily allowance. And even when we have actually lost the final of this tournament, when we went back to India, we really didn't feel like that. That's the amount of love and warmth we got, which is a huge thing for the women's game. Because when these girls were back in England and they had devastatingly lost that final by 9 runs, they thought, this is another opportunity just gone. You know, we're going to go back to India and it's all going to be back to square one. So equal pay, I feel, is a bit of a distant dream at the moment. What I feel is the volume of cricket for women needs to increase. It is only now that the BCCI has started looking at a little more of a systematic calendar for women. An entire year during the pandemic almost was not used. Even while bio bubbles had become a normal in international sport, the IPL was conducted in the UAE. The girls only went on later to play a 4-match women's IPL, which is a bit of a farce, if you ask me. And I say that despite being somebody who earns her bread and butter from the IPL, because these are girls who have not played for so many months. They've had no practice. They've only been gymming at home and drying on their terraces. And you've organized 3 round-robin matches and 1 final, and then you make fun of the scores. You know, they've not played any cricket. They're not even getting to play 1 more extra match. And if you see the kind of cricket that internationally is being played by the women, the 100 has just finished, and the women's 100 was so exciting to watch. The question is, what are we waiting for a full-fledged women's IPL? You know, you don't have to have 8 teams. You don't have to have the same rules for foreign players in the playing 11. No, start small. I think there is enough proof now that we've got excellent bench strength. The tour of England, where we even played a one-off test for the first time after 2014 and did so well, you know, and drew that test match, tells you that the amount of talent is phenomenal and you should not be doubting your bench strength. So start off with whatever you have instead of delaying. So I think a full-fledged women's IPL is the need of the hour, as is overall increasing and improving the volume of cricket that the girls
and hopefully more women's tests. I mean, I really look.
It was so much fun. And they're going to play a pink ball test match in Australia, which I'm really looking forward to.
I've always been a fan of Smriti Mandhana, but to watch her in a test match, you know, the elegance of her stroke play and all that was really something quite special.
Correct.
So just to finish with you, Sunil. So a couple of final questions. One is, as I said at the start, there are very few novels about cricket, and particularly about Indian cricket. Do you have any? Were there any cricket novels set in the world of cricket that you had read and appreciated that perhaps inspired you writing this book? And secondly, I was very struck by one aspect of the book, and since you're here, I wanted to make sure I asked you about it, which is that your book is a very thrilling book, lots of ups and downs. It's very much like a cricket match, that life sometimes is very eventful, sometimes it's slower. But there was another aspect of the book, which was these 2 romances or near romances that Ramdas has, and it was interesting to me that his life was very dramatic, but the romances were more marked by the absence of drama and the absence of event and things that don't actually end up happening. I thought that was very interesting, so I wanted to ask you about that.
I'm so glad you did, actually, because as I said, everything's not a bed of roses. He is not going to wed in bed, the next day. And that's what I wanted to get across, that is life. That is life. What drives you in life. And I think those are the critical things that, yes, absolutely. You can have near romances, you can have relationships that may have gone somewhere, but could not have gone somewhere. That is life. You don't always get what you want. And even till the end, I think you will be able to agree with me. You don't know who actually he wanted out of the 2 girls. That to my mind,
I don't think he knew who he was.
I don't think he knew exactly. Absolutely. And so there were so many strands that were woven into it. That's the whole thing. There are dilemmas. You don't know everything about your life. You don't know, I want this, I want that. When you get it, maybe you don't want that, right? And because there was one which was cross-border, to my mind, that actually got the other part of the sort of romantic tension across, which to my mind is important. And I don't think we need to neglect it just because it's cross-border. I think
Yeah.
it is something that needs to be talked about, cross-border, cross-religion, cross-caste, everything else. But finally, I mean, I know we're coming to the end of this.
Yeah.
You know, there is something I wanted to put in the book, but then I said I won't because it was going to overdo it. And there's that famous poem of John Donne, which says, "No man is an island, entire to himself. Every man's death diminishes me. So ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." And I want people to go away thinking like that. It's me. You know, I have to think about my life. I have to think about those Augean stables. I don't have to think about the other person. If I think about the other person, it's in the context of a larger issue, a larger world that we need to be thinking about. And I think those are the things, you know, the metaphor of final innings is a metaphor that's beyond cricket. And I'm so glad you like Test cricket, because that's why I made it a Test cricketer, not a one-day cricketer.
No, I've always felt that, you know, I think Test cricket is the most lifelike, has the most lifelike pace of any game. Because as you say, life is not always, life is often slow and it requires struggle and patience.
Ups and downs, that's right, absolutely, yes.
And also, Test cricket is actually the most novel-like form in the sense of an unfolding, you know, gradual unfolding. And both Test cricket and novels are threatened, I think, by other forms that hopefully we can all learn to you know, the 100 and Test cricket can coexist, and novels and TV shows can coexist. And that's my hope. I maybe a foolish hope, but we'll see.
Hallelujah,
anyway,
hallelujah. I completely agree.
On that note, I just want to remind all of you, these books are available, easily available, you know, on diverse platforms. Final Innings by Sunil Gupta, really both thrilling and quite deep novel that uses cricket to ask deeper questions, to ask sort of lots of deeper questions. And Suprita Das's pioneering history of women's cricket in India, free hit. So do go out and read them. Can't recommend them strongly enough. And with that, thank you both, and over to you, Kritika.
Thank you, Keshav. Thank you, Sunil. And thank you, Suprita, for that wonderful conversation and for touching upon such interesting aspects of the game and for addressing issues that sometimes are completely forgotten. Thank you all for watching, and we hope to see you next week on the 20th of August with the book launch of Mapping Love, Ashwini Iyer Tiwari in conversation with Meghna Pant on GLF First Edition at 7 p.m. IST. I hope you all will be able to join us. Good night and take care.
In these times during COVID, when we're all sitting at home, it's sort of like a ray of light that we get to watch these amazing sessions when we can't all be together. It certainly brightens up my evenings.
आज पेंडेमिक में हम डिजिटली जयपुर लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल कर रहे हैं, और मुझे लगता है कि हमारे सामने श्रोता नहीं है, हम आपस में बात कर रहे हैं, लेकिन उस फील को, उस उमंग को महसूस कर सकते हैं कि हजारों लाखों लोग हमसे जुड़े हुए हैं, हमको सुन रहे हैं, और कहीं ना कहीं कोई एक सार्थक हस्तक्षेप हो रहा है.
People who came online to view and listen to our incredible speakers from across the world, we were able to continue in our tradition of ensuring the free flow of knowledge and information.